I was 80 years old when I made the decision to move into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the safest and most logical choice. My children insisted they wanted me somewhere I could receive round-the-clock care, where I wouldn't have to worry about chores or cooking, where I could be with people my own age. I remember the day I signed the papers, feeling a mixture of relief, apprehension, and even a hint of excitement about what life might look like in this next phase. Yet I never imagined that this single decision would grow into one of the greatest regrets of my life. If you're thinking about making the same move, or you have a loved one who's on the fence, I urge you to hear me out before you pack your bags, because what I experienced was far different from the reassuring brochures and persuasive conversations I had with my family. The first few days felt more like a trial period than a new home. Nurses and staff came in to introduce themselves. My children helped me arrange some photographs and knickknacks to personalize the room, and I tried to think positively about all the benefits I was supposed to gain from living here. But it didn't take long for the reality of my situation to sink in. By the end of the first week, my room felt more like a hotel I couldn't check out of than a place I truly belonged. The walls were sterile, the windows overlooked a parking lot rather than a garden, and there was a persistent smell of antiseptic in the halls that reminded me this was a place of management, not a cozy sanctuary. Losing my independence was the hardest blow. At home, I had cherished little routines that gave me a sense of self, a sense of pride. I would get up early, brew my own coffee, read the newspaper in my favorite chair by the window, and decide for myself how to spend the day. Maybe take a walk around the neighborhood, call a friend, or tend to my rose bushes. But once I moved into the nursing home, every aspect of life seemed governed by a structured routine that wasn't mine. Meals came at set times. If I dared to sleep in, I often missed breakfast. And there wasn't much flexibility if I told them, I'll eat a little later. Everything from medication delivery to laundry to lights out followed a strict schedule. And if that schedule didn't align with my natural rhythm, well, that was my problem. It might sound trivial at first, complaining about things like set meal times or routines, but these little freedoms add up to something bigger, your sense of autonomy. When you can no longer choose when to have your morning coffee or when to turn off the lights at night, it starts to feel like you've lost yourself in a system that treats you like a patient rather than a person. I used to pride myself on being able to handle my own affairs. Now, if I wanted to take a walk outside the facility, I had to sign out and sometimes wait for someone to unlock a door or confirm I could manage on my own. It made me feel as though I was living in a place designed to keep me in, rather than support me as I went about life on my own terms. Then came the feeling of being forgotten. My children, bless their hearts, told me they'd visit often, and for a while they did, but as the weeks turned into months, their visits became less frequent. They'd call me instead, or send a text message to one of the staff members checking in on me. I remember one Sunday afternoon, sitting by the main entrance watching for my daughter's car. She had promised to come by for a few hours. 30 minutes passed, then an hour, then two. The front doors kept sliding open for other families, other visitors, but not for her. I checked my phone, saw no missed calls, and realized I didn't even have reliable service in my room to get a text message. Eventually, I wheeled myself back to my room, feeling more alone than ever. It wasn't that my daughter stopped caring. Life just got busy. But once you're out of sight in a nursing home, it's easy for people to assume you're fine, that you don't need the same constant attention, or that you're in the best place possible. Out of sight, out of mind becomes an uncomfortable truth. If you're still watching at this point and finding these reflections valuable, I'd appreciate it if you comment at number 2 below, just to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so and turning on that notification bell so you don't miss any future content that might help you or someone you love. Now allow me to continue with my story. Another bitter truth came in the form of losing my sense of purpose. All my life, I'd been the one in charge of something. My job, my household, even small community responsibilities. I'd wake up with tasks in mind and go to bed feeling accomplished. In the nursing home, I quickly ran out of things that felt meaningful to me. The staff took care of cleaning and cooking, so I couldn't even busy myself with tasks like washing dishes or tidying up my space if I wanted to. Days blurred together in a gray monotony of television, occasional activities in the common room, and waiting for meal times. At first, I tried to join in some group activities, but they often felt repetitive or targeted at people with different limitations than mine. The staff meant well, but they had to please dozens of residents with different tastes and abilities, and it's almost impossible to tailor something for everyone. I felt out of place, like I was just going through the motions of daily bingo games and movie nights that started too early and played films I had no interest in. In the midst of this routine, I realized I had also lost a lot of my physical mobility. Let me explain. I was in decent shape for someone in their 80s. I could still do light housework, cook, and take short walks around my old neighborhood. But in the nursing home, everything was designed to keep me from straining or overexerting myself, which ironically led me to become more sedentary. They insisted I use a wheelchair for longer distances, even though I still preferred walking with a cane. At the time I thought, well, maybe they're just being cautious, but over the weeks my leg muscles grew weaker from lack of everyday movement. My knees stiffened because I didn't walk as much, and if I tried to stand up suddenly or take a few steps on my own, I'd feel dizzy or unsteady, which further convinced the staff that I needed the chair at all times. It's a vicious cycle. The more help you accept, the more help you end up needing. Before I knew it, what used to be a quick walk down the hall to the dining area felt like a trek. For someone who prided themselves on independence, watching my body deteriorate that quickly was terrifying. As my mobility declined, something else weighed heavily on me: the invasion of privacy. You see, in a nursing home, you're never truly alone. Nurses and aides pop in and out of your room, sometimes with just a quick knock, sometimes with none at all, checking vitals, delivering medications, or bringing in new towels. It's part of their job, I understand that. But as someone who valued quiet moments of solitude, I never realized how precious privacy was until it was gone. Even having a phone call felt like a public affair, because the walls were thin and my roommate could hear every word unless I ducked into the hallway. And yes, roommates. Many nursing homes offer shared rooms unless you pay a premium for a private one. I ended up sharing a room with a sweet but forgetful woman who often talked to herself at odd hours. It made sleeping through the night a challenge, and whenever she had visitors, I felt like I was intruding on her personal space. I tried to be gracious, but the feeling of living in someone else's bubble never really went away. If you're someone who values peace, quiet, and the option to shut the door on the world, moving into a shared space can feel like a harsh downgrade. If you're still with me and you haven't fallen asleep or moved on to another video, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're engaged. It also helps our channel connect with more people who might need to hear this message. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to do that now, because we bring real stories and lessons learned straight from life experience, not just theory. Let's move on. Over time, I also discovered that leaving a nursing home, once you're in, can be extremely difficult. When I first arrived, I told myself it was just a trial, that if I didn't like it, I could leave. But I soon realized that my home, my real home, had been left empty, and my family had already started to make changes. It became harder to just go back. Because the upkeep and bills were piling up, some belongings were sold or given away, and my name was locked into a financial contract with a facility. Even my modest savings quickly drained under the constant costs of care, room, and board. Before I knew it, the option to move out felt like a far-off dream. I also lost strength in my body, which made me question whether I could manage daily tasks if I did move back home. The staff in the nursing home, noticing my physical decline, saw it as further proof that I belonged there. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The longer I stayed, the less capable I was of living independently, which made it harder to leave, which in turn further eroded my independence. One of the most unsettling parts of my experience was realizing how many residents simply gave up on living life to the fullest once they were inside. I remember meeting a gentleman named Roland, a 17-year-old retired mechanic who used to have a passion for tinkering with engines. During our first conversation, he enthusiastically told me how he missed his workshop, how he'd give anything to smell the oil and hear the hum of a running motor. But over the months, I watched his spark fizzle out. He stopped talking about machines and eventually seemed to lose interest in almost everything. Sitting in the common lounge, he'd watch TV with hollow eyes, barely reacting to the news or the movies that played day after day. And he wasn't an exception. I saw this same transformation in dozens of residents who arrived with unique stories and passions, only to fade into the routine of the place until they were just faces in wheelchairs, waiting for the next meal, the next pill, the next brief conversation. None of this is to say the staff are evil or that nursing homes are always horrible. Many of the nurses I met were genuinely caring people who worked long hours and did their best under difficult conditions. But the system itself seems more focused on efficiency and risk reduction than on truly fostering a meaningful life for its residents. When you have so many patients to look after, it's natural to streamline tasks and put everyone on a standard routine. The problem is that human beings aren't meant to be standardized. We lose our individuality and our dignity when we treat it as just another room number. Then there's the unspoken reality of witnessing decline up close. You see neighbors pass away more often than you'd like to admit. Hallways get quieter, rooms get emptied, and then someone new moves in, repeating the cycle. You start to feel the weight of mortality pressing in on you. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We all have to face death eventually. But there's a big difference between embracing the natural course of life on your own terms and feeling trapped in a place where reminders of the end loom around every corner. I found it emotionally draining to watch the friend I made at lunch one day become incapacitated or transferred to another wing the next week. That environment, filled with so much illness and so many final chapters, can take a toll on your mental health. It's important to note that some people do thrive in nursing homes if they genuinely require the level of medical care provided, or if they find a community that matches their personality. But for many of us, it's not the only option. Looking back, I wish I had explored alternatives like in-home care, hiring part-time help for chores, or even moving into a smaller apartment near my family. I wish I had been more vocal about my desire to stay engaged in community activities rather than being whisked into a setting that prioritized safety over fulfillment. By the time I realized these regrets, I was already signed into contracts. My house was partially dismantled, and my savings were tied up in monthly nursing home fees. It's not impossible to leave, but it's a lot harder than people think. If you're still here and all of this resonates with you, or if you're listening on behalf of a loved one, I encourage you to think carefully. Reflect on whether the nursing home route is the right path. Ask yourself if there are home modifications or local services that could help you or your loved one remain in familiar surroundings longer. Speak openly with family members about your concerns. Tell them that what you truly value is independence, privacy, and a sense of purpose. If they're worried about your safety, come up with a balanced plan. Maybe someone helps you do grocery shopping once a week, or you install emergency alert systems. Maybe you downsize to a single-story home with fewer maintenance responsibilities. There are more ways to address the challenges of aging than simply handing over your autonomy to a place that might not truly suit you. As for me, if I could turn back time, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home. I would have hired someone to help me a few hours each day with cleaning and cooking, maybe even yard work. I would have arranged for a visiting nurse to check on me for any medical concerns, and I would have stayed active in my local community centers, where I had friends who shared my interests. Perhaps I would have lost a bit of convenience. Sure, there would have been more steps to organizing my life, but at least I would have retained a sense of identity and control that the nursing home experience stripped from me. Sometimes I look out the window of my current room, watching cars and people go by, and I wonder how many seniors in those cars might be heading down the same path I did. Maybe their children have convinced them that a nursing home is the safest place. Maybe the glossy pamphlets reassured them it's all about comfort and specialized care. I wish I could reach through those windows and show them the reality of what I've experienced, the loss of privacy, the shrinking social visits, the dependency you accumulate whether you like it or not, and the emotional toll of living where there's always a sense of finality in the air. If you found any part of my story helpful or eye-opening, please let me know in the comments. It might feel strange or scary to discuss such personal matters, but your experiences and feedback could help others make more informed decisions. Maybe you've already walked this road and have insights to share. Or perhaps you're just beginning to wonder whether a nursing home is the right move for you or a family member. By sharing our stories, we can support each other in making choices that truly honor our lives, our dignity, and our passions. And if you think this video might help someone you know, please don't hesitate to share it. You might save them from stepping into a situation that they'll regret later. There's a tendency in our society to assume that once you're past a certain age, your preferences and freedoms don't matter as much. But let me tell you, every year, every day is still precious. You're not merely meant to exist, you're meant to continue living in a way that fulfills you and respects who you are, regardless of age. I don't claim to have all the answers, and I know that some people truly benefit from nursing homes, especially if they have complex medical needs or little family support. But if there's any chance you can maintain a bit more independence, if you can keep your routines and your sense of self alive, I encourage you to explore that possibility first. Look into home healthcare agencies, meal delivery services, senior centers, local volunteer groups, anything that can help you remain active and engaged without forcing you into a place that might limit your freedom. Now, if you're still watching, drop a comment below to let me know. Hearing your voice in the comments makes me feel less alone and more hopeful that this message will reach those who need it most. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you'll know when new content comes out. We share real-life stories, lessons learned, and practical tips that could make all the difference in how you or a loved one navigates the later chapters of life. I want to leave you with this final thought. Living in a nursing home taught me many hard lessons, but it also made me realize that every stage of life should be lived intentionally. Don't fall into a decision just because it seems convenient. Ask questions, listen to your heart, and remember that your life is yours to direct. Whether you're 70, 80, or 90, you still have the right to choose how you spend your days, who you spend them with, and what level of privacy and autonomy you want to maintain. I hope my story helps at least one person pause and reconsider, because that pause could be the difference between spending your final years truly living rather than simply waiting. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for sharing this moment with me. I hope you walk away from this video with a stronger sense of how important it is to protect your independence and your peace of mind. Even if you've already made a move like I did, know that it's never too late to look for ways to restore a little more of your freedom, whether that's speaking up for yourself within the facility, seeking a transfer to a place with more lenient policies, or even breaking free if your circumstances allow it. You deserve to feel like the author of your own life story, no matter your age. May we all keep learning, growing, and living in a way that honors our dignity and our dreams. Thank you again for being here, and I truly look forward to seeing you in the next video.